Compared to other Gatekeeper trips we've done in the past, this visit to Lebanon and Syria is more timely. We were in Syria the day after the United States announced sanctions on the Syrian government, and we were able to get the first reaction from the Syrian President Bashar Assad to those sanctions.
Well, certainly the chance to be with Bashar Assad in the extraordinary palace on the ridge overlooking Damascus, whisked up there in a motorcade of black Hondas, government Hondas, and then to have a chance to talk to a man who very rarely sits down with American journalists and shares his ideas and really opens up, I thought, quite in a quite articulate way about what was on his mind, about his views on the American sanctions, but much more broadly on all the central issues in the Middle East, on the Israeli-Palestinian issue, on Hizbullah, on internal reform in Syria. I mean, that kind of access is really priceless.
Thank you. Open list. Thank you.
Thank you for all your time.
وبنفس الوقت عضو في حزب.
I should sacrifice myself for the supreme ideas, which are the freedom, democracy, justice that my country lacked.
We met with dissidents who had been imprisoned, both under his father and under the younger Bashar al-Assad. But they spoke about what they termed the Damascus Spring, which was a relaxation of political controls a couple of years ago under the younger president. But they feel that even though they are now out of jail and were free to speak with us, that there is still a long way to go before freedom of expression is really allowed.
There is many people from the Ba'ath Party, there is many people want reform. With the degree, not what I want, but to change, many people want to change.
The whole idea of our annual trips is to encourage editors to see for themselves the issues that are of concern and are of importance in the region, with the goal of going back to their news organizations and being better able to provide in-depth coverage for their readers, viewers, and listeners.
It's always easier to put stories in the paper about what happened. I think we don't do as good of a job explaining why they happened. And one of the things I found on this trip is that the why isn't always as easy as what. And being here has given me a good sense, in some cases, of why things happen. And that kind of context, I would hope to get into our stories a lot more.
That it tends to be the same kind of coverage. The Arab community seems to be reduced to the Islamic community, which actually is...
I knew before we came that there was a lot of skepticism about American policy in this region. What I didn't realize was that every person we would meet from one end of the spectrum to the other shared that skepticism and cynicism, and I think it will make some difference in the kinds of stories that I assign and choose to run in the paper.
Right after 9/11, there was this kind of a frenzy all over the U.S., and we did do a lot of stories in Washington.
Three of the editors were invited by the American University in Beirut to have a session that talked about the American media perspectives of the Middle East. It was open to the public. We had an overflow crowd, and many people were interested in hearing from the editors about how the American media does its work, what attitudes and what assumptions they bring to their coverage of the Middle East.
You all talked about the responses that you got from viewers and readers. I just wanted your opinion on how much of a direct effect that has on what you then say and how you say it. And
I thought our editors did very well in giving them a sense of how the American media works, what kinds of questions it asks, how they put together stories.
American viewers and the country as a whole are more drawn, this is a bad trend, to the niche that reinforces their own views, I'm afraid. I think that's a bad trend. And the United States, I mean, all you have to do is look at the polls. You know this as well as I do. I mean, this country, our country, America, is split right down the middle.
when you look here, you forget that this was a war zone. You could see it still perhaps at the green line. You know, there are traces. In the downtown, the engine moved very quickly. For better or worse now, it's a really, really attractive place for different walks of life, different religions. It's the common place for everyone.
Because the trip was to Beirut, we thought it was important to look at issues of war and reconstruction, not only for the lessons that it had for Beirut and how people after a 16-year civil war were trying to move on, but also for the lessons that it might hold for Iraq, which is going through a similar kind of turmoil and convulsion.
The Christian-Muslim issue was more in the beginning of the war in 75-76, but later on it was much less, from the point of view that it wasn't really much of a civil war.
There's a remarkable couple. The husband is an architect. The wife is a history teacher who have put together on their own initiative a Green Line tour of the Green Line that separated the Christian and Muslim areas, and that was the flashpoint for the 16-year civil war. And they took us through chronologically from the time the war began to different sites along it.
And there was quite a few peace marches and demonstrations against the war, demonstrations against inflation, always at this museum area crossing. Again, it being a place where people felt that it represented Lebanon as a whole.
And it was very interesting to hear about how the Lebanese are grappling with the legacy of the Civil War, to what extent they can deal with it and to what extent they've been reluctant to open up some of the unfinished issues.
The Murad family is from 2002, 1922 to 2002 basically. And significance just simply proves that there's still a community. And it's very low profile basically, and we're still here.
For the editors, I think this has been a really eye-opening experience. It's the first time for many of them, not just to Lebanon and Syria, but to the region. The editors have told me that they're coming away with a much better understanding of the broader issues in the area. Some of them have come away with specific contact names of persons who they will invite to write op-ed articles, to contribute to radio and television pieces that they will produce about the region. I think all of this is helpful to the American people to provide a broader base of understanding of one of the most complex and volatile regions in the world.